Hey everybody, welcome to session 1.5 of my FileMaker for Stage Lighting series. If you're just joining us for the first time tonight, I highly recommend you go back and watch the first 4 videos. They have a lot of really important information. Most of the stuff we're going to be covering tonight directly builds off of those first 4 videos. So definitely go check those out. This is the last of this chapter. The idea of tonight is again, a wrap up of kind of little things that I couldn't fit into any of the other sessions. Starting on Thursday, I'm going to start chapter 2. And we'll see where that goes from there. All right, let's go ahead and jump right in. So if you don't already have it open, you're going to want to open up your session, the solution that we started building last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess. This is, if you remember correctly, we have our work notes database here. We have our instruments database, everything still working as we left it, which is great. Lovely. So tonight, the first thing we're going to be looking at is conditional formatting. So what is conditional formatting? Conditional formatting is basically a way to take a piece of text, a button, a field, and change the visual appearance of it based on a formula or based on whatever values are in that field. If you've ever done this with Excel, you know you can, of course, if it's a negative value, make the cell red. If it's a positive value, make it green. So kind of the same thing here in FileMaker, only we can be just way more specific about what we can format things as. So I'm going to go into my work notes layout here, if you're not already there, and I'm going to enter layout mode. Again, that's Command L or File Manage Layouts. So the first thing I want to do is probably a pretty easy thing to figure out. We might want to color code is by priority, right? So when we're looking at our list here, we have normal priority, high priority, and low priority. For normal and low, probably don't need any kind of color, but if it's a high priority item, we might want to draw more attention to that particular item. So what I'm going to do is in layout mode, I'm going to right click on that priority field. And then right here under conditional formatting, you can see I have several different options that I can start setting, and several different rules that can change that text based on several different formulas or different calculations. So I'm going to add a new rule here, and I'm going to say value is equal to high. Then I want the text color to be bright red. And you can see I've got a little red and blue diamond here on that field to denote that it has some conditional formatting attached to it. So now when I go back into browse mode, you can see that any of those work notes that had a high priority, that text has now turned red. If I change this to normal, it's gone again. So I could, if I wanted to, I could say low could be green. So I go right back in here into the conditional formatting menu. I'm going to add another value here. Value is equal to low. Text color, let's do green. Just like that. So you could also get creative with this with changing your status. So if the status is active or to do or on hold, you do all kinds of things, really kind of coming up with a color coding system that works for you, something that's going to draw your eye and make sure that you get the information you need as quickly as possible. So yeah, we can format text, we can do that. But what's really cool is we can actually format the fill color of buttons to reflect that conditional formatting as well. So unfortunately, just drawing an object, that doesn't work for like a square. You can't do conditional formatting on any of these kinds of these layout, the lines or squares or circles or anything like that. But if I make a button that just doesn't do anything, it's essentially the equivalent of having a rectangle, right? So I'm going to draw my button. I'm going to maybe turn off the border around. I'm going to make it a solid color, turn off the border around it. And now it's essentially just a rectangle, right? So what I'll do is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to add basically like a little colored bar along the edge of my screen that's going to reflect what the status is. So we'll do something like that. We will send this to the very back. And maybe we'll just kind of, we'll move, oops. We'll move this all over a little bit. Now, if you notice, as I zoom out, you see that I still have my page margin turned on from before. So I'm going to come in here and turn off page margin. That looks a little more like what we're used to. Okay, so then I'm just going to move basically all of this stuff over a little bit off of that bar, like so. And now I set up the same kind of conditional formatting rules that I did under that priority field. So I can right click, do conditional formatting, say if, now because, let me back up for a second. So because this conditional formatting was linked to an actual field, I had the option to choose a value because it knows that I'm talking about the value within that particular field. When you have a layout object like a button or something like this, sorry, that's the wrong button, you'll notice that that option is not available to us. So under conditional formatting here, as I add one, value is grayed out. So I have to actually make a calculation formula here. So I'm going to click specify, and I'm going to say work notes priority is equal to high fill color red. And we'll add another one. And of course, what I could do is come in here and copy paste this. I wish there was a duplicate button here. Unfortunately, there's not. And again, I probably wouldn't do a fill color for a low priority note. Let's add a normal as well, just so you can get the idea of everything possible here. And of course, between red and green would be orange, I guess. Okay, so now when I go back into browse mode, you can see I have color-coded bars along the edge of my records. So pretty cool. You can then, of course, copy paste this this little button, this little color-coded button we made onto your printed reports if you wanted to. You could, if you really wanted to get creative, you could have this be filling the entire space. So now you've got some color-coded records. Unfortunately, you cannot do conditional formatting on the entire body, which would be super nice. It does have to be some kind of a field or a button or something like that. So I typically, like I said, use the button as a square. And then once you've made one, it's pretty easy to just copy paste that into other things and change them accordingly. The other cool thing you could use this for, in my solution, I've got some dimmer phase templates set up. So it knows, dimmers 1 through whatever in phase A, phase B, phase C. I can actually color code the back of my dimmer field with red, blue, or black. You can come up with all kinds of really cool solutions that you can use that conditional formatting for. Okay, so we talked about adding the bar. We talked about the status field. Let's see here. What else could we conditionally format? Oh, I know. So when we first set up this database, we deleted some of the default fields that were built in. And I only did that just so we could really work from the ground up. If you didn't delete those fields, then you probably have some fields in your database manager here called a created timestamp, a modified timestamp, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to just recreate that creation timestamp. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have that be an auto enter whenever it was created. So basically what this is saying is every time I make a new record, it's going to fill in a field called creation timestamp with the exact date and time that that record was created. Oops, my Mixbook just ran out of battery. So now what I could do is I could add that, let's get some blank space right here. I'm going to go ahead and add that field to this layout. Now I don't want to necessarily be able to change the value of that. So what I'm actually going to do is instead of adding a field object, I don't think we've done this yet, I'm going to actually take a text box and I am going to make that text box reflect the values that are in that field. I'm going to do double carets, then my table name, double colon, field name, double carets. I'll center align that, make it nice and big. Now you notice when I go back into browse mode, well, wait a second, that didn't show up. And that's because these records here were all created before I had that field. If I add a new record now, notice right away, this timestamp is today's date and exact time to the second. Now you might say, okay, that's cool, but why might I want that? Well, we can actually start doing things with that conditional formatting to highlight certain notes that are older than X amount of days, or ones that are, if it's a week old, it turns bright red. If it's a day old, it turns yellow, et cetera, et cetera. So to do that, I'm going to come in here into conditional formatting, and I'm going to say value is more than, let's say, 1 day past. Maybe we do the text color. Maybe it comes orange at that point. And then maybe value is more than 2 days past. We're really on a tight deadline here, and it's going to become red. So now when I come back, well, and let's add one more. Let's say value is today. We'll make it, oops, sorry. I accidentally edited the wrong one. Just going to click cancel and redo that. So I'm going to add value is today, text color green. Okay. So now if I look at that record that I have down here with a timestamp on it, it's green. It knows it's today. Best way to show you how this, obviously we don't want to be able to edit this, but I'm going to make a temporary field to edit that just so you can see those different conditions. So I'm just going to, let's say, copy paste this field here. I'm going to change it over to be that timestamp. Allow editing. And now if I come in here and I change this, let's say to 2 days ago, there it is. If I change it older than that, let's say 01, now it's red. So with that creation timestamp in there and some of that conditional formatting, you could also apply that same stuff to some of your sorting or some of your finding scripts. So you could create a finding script that shows you all the work notes that are aging or older than 2 days, shows you all the work notes from today, all the work notes from yesterday, just by having that one field in there. You can also use the modification timestamp the same way. So you can see, has this work note been updated? What work notes were updated today? What work notes were updated yesterday? All kinds of really cool stuff you can do just with that simple field and a little bit of conditional formatting. So I'm just going to move this off my layout for now, just in case we need to use it another time. And you notice now if I hit new record, boom, now that one's green, et cetera, et cetera. Pretty cool. And there's my priority bar. So right away, I've started to add some pretty useful stuff to my layout. Okay, so we've done that. We've done that. Next thing I want to cover, this is a totally separate topic. We're going to talk a little bit about dynamic value lists. So last week, we set up a couple of value lists. We can go to Manage Value Lists to find those. Of course, we set up our people names. We set up our work note types, et cetera, et cetera. Oops, I accidentally... not supposed to see that yet. And then we did create one here that was called work note targets. And this is one that was based on another table. So that's what I mean when I say a dynamic value list. It's a value list that's values can change based on a table contents or field contents. So what I want to do is I want to be able to transform this button bar that we made before, this one all the way at the top here with plot, programming, work, all that kind of stuff. I want to be able to transform that into a dynamic button bar that's only going to show me the actual types of work notes that I've used in my show. So in order to do that, the first thing that I need to do is set up that value list. So I'm going to create a new value list. I'm going to call this work note targets in use. And I'm going to use values from field, work notes, excuse me, types, not targets. Work note types in use, using values from field, work notes, type. Great. So now if I were to just add kind of a, I need to copy paste something real quick, please stand by. I accidentally had the wrong button bar at the top. Here we go. I'm just going to copy paste this button bar in from an earlier version of this file so nobody gets confused. Boom. There we go. Okay, so again, what I'm trying to do is I want to make these button labels and the actual functions of those buttons be dynamic and changed based on the types of work notes that I have in my show. Okay, so to show you just the contents of that value list, I'm going to copy paste this over really quickly, and we're going to choose work notes types in use. And now when I look at it, you can see I've got focus, plot, programming, work. If I deleted, let's say I deleted programming notes, I'm going to find all the programming ones and I'm going to delete them. Now, if I click on this, programming is gone because all I have is focus, plot, and work left. Great, so we've set up our value list. Now we're ready to go ahead and start adding the dynamic labels to these buttons. So if we double click on this button bar, we'll choose our first one here. And we noticed before our title for that button is just a single word in quote marks, right? Pretty simple. But if you've noticed before, there's a little pencil mark next to that field that allows us to specify a calculation for that field itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a calculation. And that calculation is going to say, oops, value list items, file name, get file name, value list, and the name of our value list was work note types in use. Okay, so now the problem with this is that what that's going to do is it's going to give us all of the value list items in that value list. So it's going to be a return separated list of pretty much everything that of all of our different types. So what we want to do is come in here and we want to use another function called get value. And so I want to take this whole thing and I'm going to cut it off of here. And I'm going to say get value. And then it's asking me for what list of values and what value number. So my list of values is going to be that calculation that we just cut, because it's going to figure out the value list in there. It's taking that value list and making that my list of values. And then I'm going to say I want the first one from that list because this is button position number 1. So now when I click OK and I come back in here, you can see this is now focus. Of course, these are because I haven't changed anything. So real quick, I feel like I did not do a good job of explaining that because I was thinking about something else while I did it. So let me explain it one more time. If we look at this in parts, so here inside of get value, it's asking us for 2 things: the list that we want to get our values from and which value we want to return to us. So I put that initial calculation inside of here to tell us I want to get my values from that initial value list, and then I want the first one out of that list. Now, of course, I can copy paste that, and I can go button by button. And all I have to do now is change this to be whichever button position that I'm in. So this can be 2. This one can be 3. This one can be 4. And I'm actually going to leave the last one as all because I want it to just find everything. Just like that, show all records. So now when I come back over here and I look at this in this mode, you can see I've got focus, plot, work. This one's empty because I don't have anything else in my value list. But if I create a new record and I give it a type of programming, boom, now programming is there. And you see it, of course, it sorts based on alphabetical order. So these are going to change based on all of that. But as I click on these things, well, clicking on them right now is not going to do anything because we haven't linked them yet. But you get the idea. Now, what you might notice is, wait a second, these are all lowercase. I prefer all of my buttons to be uppercase. That's a pretty easy fix. I'm going to come in here, double click on them again. And then within this calculation, I'm going to add upper, open parentheses, and put an extra close parentheses at the end. The same thing again here. I'm going to say upper, open parentheses, close parentheses. And I'll do those 2 so you can see the difference. And you'll notice it transformed those into being uppercase. So we'll do that to all of them. Upper basically takes whatever values. If we look at this by itself, when I say upper, it's just saying put whatever text that you want into uppercase. So pretty simple. So I'm just cutting this, saying upper, pasting it inside of there. That's all there is to it. Great. So now I've got the buttons that will dynamically change what they say, but they're still linked to what they used to do. They're not actually searching for focus, plot, whatever. I can click plot here and you notice this actually searched for focus notes because when we originally set this button bar up, that button was searching for focus. So the next thing we need to do is to start passing along that information from this button to that script that we had made before to know what we are trying to find. So I'm going to go back into layout mode. And I am going to create this new script. So I've already started this script, but I'll walk you through how it works. So the first thing I did is I set my error capture on, I froze my window, and then I set a variable called button position. So what I'm doing with that variable called button position is I am going to assign script parameters to each one of these buttons based on which one it is. So the first one will be number 1, the second one will be number 2, third one will be number 3, fourth one will be number 4. So I'm going to get that button position based on that. And then I'm going to search using the, basically using the exact same calculation that I used to set the button name. But instead of putting a physically hard-coded button number into the end of that string, I'm going to use that button position variable that I set up. So again, I'm setting a variable based on which button I'm clicking. I am then setting a search parameter based on what position in the value list that is. And then I'm performing a find where the type of work note equals that search variable. So now to make that happen on this end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say perform script, search based on button with a script parameter of 1. Same thing again, perform script, search based on button, script parameter of 2. Now, if you're not familiar with script parameters, again, I highly recommend you go back and watch some of the videos from last week. We talked about these a little bit. Basically, what a script parameter is doing is it's executing a script that I'm specifying, but it's passing along a piece of information to that script. So when I click this button, it's going to perform the script, but it's going to also say, hey, I want you to know that the context was 4 whenever I clicked execute. So let's try that out. So now when I click on plot, oops, why didn't that work? Show all, focus. Oh, I see why, because I accidentally have a space here in between my in and use, so it couldn't find the value list. So now focus, plot, programming, work. And again, we didn't do anything to it. It's just a show all records button. Great. So I know that's a lot of information, and I felt like I got a little flustered when I was explaining it. So I'll rewatch this video, and I'll try to type up better instructions for it and put them in the comments. But if it didn't make sense, go back and watch it a couple times, and also just really take a look at how this script is working. It should be relatively easy to figure out. Now, something you might be saying right away with this script is, do I need to set both of these variables? Couldn't I just put this get script parameter into the end of this string? The answer is absolutely yes, you could. I could say instead of button position, I could make this a get script parameter. I like to separate it out just for my own kind of logical thinking purposes. Adding that one little extra line is not going to make this particular script any more inefficient. So I like to leave it there, and then I can, let's say I had to use it again later, I have it and I can use it again later. If you're trying to figure out a really complex calculation, I think the best way to do that is to lay out a script where you're going step by variables, and then start to take those pieces of the calculations you're making in your variables and pasting them into your earlier things until you eventually get, like one long calculation that works. Kind of an easy way to abstract it a little bit. Okay, so those buttons are now working. They're showing us exactly what we have in our show. Again, if I delete this programming note, now I don't have a programming type anymore, and this button doesn't do anything. Now, of course, well, actually it does do something. It gets rid of all of them because there's nothing there. What you might be asking is there a way to dynamically resize this bar? Unfortunately, no. And also, unfortunately, you can't pass, the reason we have to use the script parameter is I can't pass the name of that button along. It's just a limitation of FileMaker. So I do have to have a fixed width for this, which really from a visual standpoint, I think looks better anyway. You might be able to, so you might be able to do some kind of conditional, you might be able to experiment a little bit with some conditional formatting. That's something I've never tried before, to get it to kind of maybe show the same color as your background if it's empty. but I'm not 100% sure that that would work. Maybe at the end of this session, I don't want to waste everybody's time. Maybe at the end of this session, I'll give that a shot and see if that would work. Okay, so we've got our conditional button, or excuse me, our dynamic button bars. And the next thing we want to look at, again, totally changing gears here, is how to start adding some custom dialog boxes to our solution. So before, you noticed, if I want to delete this node, I click delete. It's giving us the default FileMaker Pro dialog box. Do I want to delete the entire record? That's interesting, fine, it works, but I might want a dialog box that gives me a little bit more contextual information on exactly what I'm deleting. If I've got 4 different windows open and I don't know which layout I'm active on, I want to know exactly what I'm deleting. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and let's add a new folder in our scripts here. We're going to call this data management. I'm going to put that data management up here by data viewing. Maybe add another line under it. Again, organization is key. And then we're going to make this just a simple delete work note with confirmation script. Okay. So first script step is going to be show custom dialog. Now I have lots of things I can set up about that custom dialog. I can say a title. Say maybe alert, exclamation point. When I'm typing in here, I don't have to put quotes. It'll automatically do that for me. I can put quotes if I want to. If you go into specify calculation, of course, you do have to use quotes. And my message could be, are you sure you want to delete this record? Okay. And now when I test that, I click play. Of course, all it's doing, I haven't linked these buttons to anything yet, so I'm just testing out to make sure this looks the way I want it to. Are you sure you want to delete this record? Okay. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, Mike, that's the exact same thing the FileMaker one did. Don't you want to customize it? Of course we can. So what I can do here is I can start defining a couple of variables. So I'm going to move this step down. I'm going to say set variable. And let's say note type. And this value for that would be work notes type. And let's say note ID, work notes ID. Okay. And that's probably all I need for now. And now within this custom dialog, I can use those variables that I've defined in a calculation here. So I can say, instead of saying, are you sure you want to delete this record? I could say, are you sure that you want to delete note type? Can't type tonight, sorry about that. And note and note ID. So let's look at how this is laid out real quick. So I've got a text string here. Are you sure you want to delete? I've made sure to leave my space inside of that quote mark. Otherwise, it'll be buttoned right up there. So I'm saying, are you sure you want to delete? And then I'm adding the note type field. Then I'm adding another text string that is space, note, space. And then I'm adding the note ID variable. So now when I click OK, I click play. Are you sure you want to delete note 12? Now, wait a second, where's the type? Well, wait a second, we forgot to assign a type to it. So I'm going to just assign a type real quick. We're going to say focus. Now, when I click this, are you sure you want to delete focus note 12? So right away, we have lots of context to tell us exactly what it is we are trying to delete. I could even make a calculation. I could do the same note up here. I could add these things into the title if I wanted to, whatever you want to do. And then, of course, I want the buttons to be kind of contextual to what I'm asking. So I'm saying, are you sure you want to delete? I'm going to say yes or no. And I'm only going to commit data if it's yes. So this is button 1, button 2, button 3. I'm going to say commit data if it's yes. So now when I play that, you see you've got, are you sure you want to delete focus note 12? no, yes. Of course, whatever the first button is going to be the default. So maybe you want to switch these. Actually, let's do that real quick. Let's switch these to be no. So by default, no is selected, so you can't accidentally make a mistake. Now when I play it, are you sure you want to delete focus note 12? Now it takes some actual interaction to come in here and say, yes, I want to delete it. Okay, so now we say, okay, well, we've clicked that, but we haven't actually made that button do anything. So to do that, what I'm going to start doing is using some if else logic. So I'm going to say if get last message choice equals 2. Again, that 2 comes from the fact that this is button number 2. I'm going to make sure I'm committing data for 2. If get last message choice is 2, then anything I want it to do will go inside of this. Because I don't really have any other options here, I don't have to do any kind of else or else if, because it'll just ignore anything if the last message choice isn't 2. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add a delete record request. I'm going to turn the dialog off. And now just like that, when I click delete, when I click that play on that script, are you sure you want to delete focus note 12? If I say no, nothing happens. If I run it again and I say yes, boom, focus, or that note number 12 is now gone. So now, of course, I could link that script. So instead of this delete button down here just being a generic delete, I could instead come in and I could link that button to this script. Now, the only challenge with doing that, what I'll caution you about, is that if you start to have different scripts for your plus, minus, and duplicate buttons on different layouts, it can get pretty confusing very quickly. So the better practice in this case would be to make this script smart enough to know what it's trying to delete. I'm not going to do that. I might do that at the end if people are interested in that. But for the most part, it's essentially just passing a script parameter. So I would say, if script parameter is work notes, then show this dialog and then delete this thing. If script parameter is instruments, then delete instrument records and show these values. So again, having one script versus 2 scripts eventually could be even more scripts later on down the road. I should probably do that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and make that happen because when we get into chapter 2, that's going to be super useful to us. So what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to move all this stuff down. And again, I'm doing this part on the fly. I was not planning on doing this. So please bear with me if I make a mistake here. We're going to say set variable. I'm just going to say delete, and it will be a get parameter. Okay. And now I can just wrap this whole thing in an if statement. And I can say if delete equals work note, then do all of this. Yeah. Else if delete equals instrument. Now, I'm already seeing a better way to do this where I could make these variables be, well, I should just do it the way that would make sense. So I'm not giving people bad information, shouldn't I? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to move this stuff out of here. So now I'm going to say, if delete is work note, then I'm going to set variable. Let's just call this A. Oops. So 1A. This will make a little bit more sense in a second. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm making those variables agnostic to what layout I'm currently on. So I can say all I have to do with my if else if is set those 2 variables. So if the script parameter is work note, it's going to set A to work note type, B to work note ID. If it's an instrument, then I'll set A to be, let's say, instruments channel. Really, that's all I need. All I need is a channel there. Actually, I'm going to make that channel here. like doing this on the fly, right? I'm actually going to make A be nothing for this case. And then I'm going to make another variable, and I'm going to call that connector. That for work notes is going to be space, note, space. And then I'm going to change this little guy right here. Do this where you can see it color coded. So basically what I'm doing is this little thing that connects those two variables. I am defining that in this script. So this can be a little bit smarter. So now I say, are you sure you want to delete A? Of course, A would be my work note type. And then we will do a separator, or excuse me, a connector, and B. Now, what you might notice is that there's no spaces in here. So this again gets a little, well, no, there is, because we added the spaces into that connector. So that's really all. Are you sure you want to delete A, connector, B? Maybe we'll add a question mark on the end and question mark. And now for this, I can say set variable connector. Okay, so let's look at what this is doing real quick, and then we'll test it out. So if the script parameter is work note, then I'm going to set three variables. I'm going to set the work note type, the work note ID, and then a connector between those. And I want that to be, let's say, focus note. Just to make this make more sense, we'll put these in between. Focus note 2. If it's an instrument, then we want to say there's really nothing for A, so I'm going to leave that blank. We might find that there's something later, which is why I left it there. So blank, channel, and then the channel number. Okay. And then within my dialog, I'm saying alert, are you sure you want to delete? And then those variables we did earlier. And then if gets last message choice is yes, deletes the record. So I'm going to save that. Next thing I need to do is link that up here to my delete button. So instead of it being a single step, I'm now going to choose data management, delete with confirmation, and I'm going to make the script parameter work note. And I probably should change the name of this script, delete with confirmation, because it's now table agnostic. All right, let's have a moment of truth here. I'm going to try it without debugging it and see what happens. So when I click delete, look at that. Oh, forgot to assign a type again. So let's say programming, delete. Are you sure you want to delete programming note 11? So it looks exactly like it did before. I'm going to say no for now because I don't want to keep deleting stuff. And now we're going to come in here to our instruments table, and we're going to link this button up the same way, perform script, delete with confirmation, instruments, is that what we made it? That's right, parameter instrument. Well, again, we should make that instruments. It's important to use the same plural or singular nouns throughout your solution. Trust me on that. You'll thank yourself later and not make a whole bunch of mistakes. Okay, so now we'll try this out, see if it works this way. I'm going to delete here. Oops, cancel. I'm going to delete channel 322. Let's do one that's by itself. Let's delete channel 4. There it is. Are you sure you want to delete channel 4? Boom, just like that. And it will do it. So the cool part about this is now I can copy paste this button set, this new duplicate delete button, on any new layout with a new table that I make, which we are going to do in chapter 2. I can copy paste that, and then all I would need to do is add another else if part of this script. This part here is always going to stay the same. I could say else if delete equals gobo. Next week we're going to be making a gobo table. Or excuse me, Thursday we're making a gobo table. Then I could set all these things up just like that. And of course, put these in whatever the right field names they are. So now I'm updating one script instead of having to manage 13 different scripts that do all the same things, just with different tables. So pretty cool. Okay, thank you for going down that road with me. I apologize if that was a little confusing, because again, I didn't plan it. The last thing that we're going to talk about today is how to do a find within another find. So what I mean by that is when we looked at our instrument records last week, we added these search buttons, right? We added a search button where we could search for different instrument types or color, again, using script parameters here. That was find by field. But the problem we had with that script is, let's say I search for par WFLs, it's going to show me all the par WFLs. Now, let's say I wanted to narrow that down a little bit and just have the back reds. If I click this button, instead of giving me just the par MFLs with purpose back red, it's going to show me anything with back red. So in this particular example, it's the same. But let's say you had different kinds of instruments doing that back red system. It's not going to be able to figure out, it's not going to be able to drill down that information like we want it to. So what we want to do is start to make this find by field script a little bit smarter and give the user an option to toggle on and off if they want to search within what they've already found or if they want to start a new search. So the first thing I want to do before I do anything is I'm going to make a backup of this find by field script. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to click on it, copy paste, and I'm just going to rename this to be backup. Because we know it works, we don't want to accidentally mess that one up. So I'm going to edit this one and leave the backup where it is. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is start moving some of these variables up to the top. So I've got this purpose, I've got color, I've got gobo, I've got type. Right now, all of these things, we're only setting them if the search parameter was specifically for them. I'm going to move them all up here to the top so that we have all of them to work with throughout our script later. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set two more variables. And I'm going to say the first one is going to be called total record count. And the value for that is going to be get total record count. Again, this is a get function. You can search that here, or if you search get functions FileMaker on Google, you can get a whole list of all the different things you can do. And then I'm going to have another variable that's going to be our found count. This is going to be get found count. So a get found count is going to basically return a number of how many individual records there are based on whatever find you've executed previously. Okay, so I've got those two variables set up. And now I want to give a custom dialog box. And I want to say, attention, make it as clever as you want it to be. Say, how should I perform search? And option A, let's say, could be say current set search. Okay. Great. Now I might be thinking, okay, but how do I know when to show that? I don't want to show that every single time. We're going to get to that in 1 second. So what we'll do next is we're going to wrap this whole thing again in an if statement. I'm going to say if, what was our choice? New search here. This was new search was button 2. Make sure we're committing that data. If get last message choice equals 2, then do all of these things. Great. So I'm going to leave that for now. And I'm just going to click on a button again. It's going to ask me, how should I perform the search? When I click on new search, basically all I've done is, I've really done nothing. I've just added extra steps to the script, right? I've only put in, I'm just passing along the exact same script that I had before. So where this becomes useful is figuring out if I want to search, based on that message choice, if I want to search within my already found set. So I'm going to say if get last message choice is 2, else if get last message equals 1. Now I can take all of these things again, I can put them in here, but instead of performing a find, we're going to do a new thing we haven't done before, and that's going to be a constrain found set. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and see what this is. So it's instrument purpose equals purpose. I'm going to say constrain found set where instruments purpose equals purpose. Once I have that in there, I'm going to delete this find because I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to say constrain found set, find records where color equals color. And I will walk you through what this script is doing kind of step by step at the end. So if you're lost right now, don't fret. Constrain found set where gobo equals gobo. Now you can see why I moved these variables up to the top of my script, because otherwise I would have to redefine them every single time. This way I have all of them. Maybe it's a little more efficient to do them all in line so you're not storing extra data, but with the amount of data we're talking about, I really don't think it matters. I'm sure there's a professional FileMaker developer out there screaming at me somewhere. Because I am not a professional at this. Okay. Type, change. Okay. So now let's look and see exactly what all of these things that I've just added are doing. And I've separated it out to make a little bit more sense. So starting from the top, I'm setting several variables. I'm saying set variable search, get script parameter. This is going to be that parameter that the button passes along to us. Set purpose based on the purpose field, so on and so forth. These two things we haven't actually used yet. I'm going to get to that in a second. Now we have our dialog box that's asking us, how do you want to perform this search? Do I want it to be a current set or do I want it to be a new search? If I say a new search, then it's going to perform a find. If I say constrain, which is a 1, then I'm going to do this and I'm going to constrain all of those things. So let's save that. Let's try it again. I'm going to say, let's show all records. Let's find an instrument that I know there'll be different colors of. So a source for 10 degree. I'm going to say new search. Right here, it's found 26 source for 10 degrees. And you notice I've got a couple of different purposes here. I've got front amber, I've got front no color, front blue, front pink, front amber. So let's say I just want to see the ones that are front amber. I'm going to click that button again, and I'm going to say current set. And now it's only found 5. It's showing me the front ambers of source for 10 degrees. Now we can make this a little bit smarter yet. If I'm looking at all of my records, I don't need this dialog to pop up. I know that if I already have all my records visible, then I'm going to want to perform a new search. So that's where these two variables we added in the very beginning come into play. And looking at my notes, I should have waited to add those until this moment, but of course I'm not adding my notes, or I'm not looking at my notes. So I'm going to actually wrap this. I'm going to wrap this this show custom dialog box in an if statement. And I'm going to say if total record count, I'm going to have to get my calculator here, does not equal, what's the other one? Found records. Yep. That's what we called it. Yeah, found records. So if the total record count does not equal found records, then show this. So basically what I'm saying is I've got 441 records in here. If my total records that I have doesn't equal that, then it knows, if the total records that I have found does not equal 441, it now knows that I'm trying to maybe perform a find within a find, and it's going to show me this dialog box. Now, the only thing I need to change about this is this little statement right here, because if I never see this dialog box, I am never going to get this, this information here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to move this stuff around a bit. I'm going to move all of this stuff down to the bottom, and I'm going to move these up to the top. And again, you'll see why in 1 second. And instead of an else if, I'm just going to make this an else. Great. And constraining was which button? That was constraining as 1. So I'm going to change this to 1. So let's look at how we just changed that script. So we've got these here. If those records don't add up, it's going to now know, hey, wait a second. This person is trying to do a find within a find. It's going to show me this custom dialog box. If I click on that dialog box with a 1, it's going to then do the constrain. Otherwise, it's just going to do the normal find. And this isn't conditionally based on what I click on that box. It's saying, if anything else happens other than getting last message choice 1, do these things. So now when I save that, I can come in here and let's say we've got all 441 visible. When I click it the first time, boom, it's now showed me just the 26° source 4s. Now, if I click on this again, it's going to ask me to clarify a little bit further. Great. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. If it doesn't, feel free to shoot a message into the chat or on YouTube or on Zoom, and I can try to cover it a little bit better. We are going to expand that one step further, because while this is great, and yeah, I want to see 36 degrees, I don't really know what I'm currently looking at. I'd love to have some kind of contextual dialog box or contextual field up here that shows me exactly what records I'm looking at in what order. So I'm going to go ahead and make that happen. So first things first, I want to add that text field to this layout. So I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to grab a random text box, copy paste it, make it nice and big. Format it a little bit. We'll make it white. And then I'm going to make this a global variable. So double carets, double $signs, and we're going to call this filter, oops, turn my caps lock off, filter state. So global variable filter state. Of course, we haven't defined that yet. If you're getting ahead of me, you know we're going to start defining this using that script we just created. So filter state. And then when I go back into browse mode, of course, nothing shows up there because I haven't defined the variable yet. And just as a quick little recap, to show a field as a text object, you're gonna wrap it in open and close carets, or excuse me, carets like that. So let's come back over here to my script. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add another script step here under the constrain found records. Actually, I'm going to start at the bottom because it would make a little more sense. So this is what happens if if I'm performing a new find, right? So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say set variable. We called it filter state. And now, because we have these other things up here, we could start making this a little bit contextual. We could say search. And let's say, okay, well, wait a second. I want to add more information. I want to say exactly what it is. I just don't want to say, you know, viewing gobo, viewing instrument. I want to say viewing gobo GAM579, viewing color R52, right? So what I can do is start adding some other variables in here under each one of these little steps. So if search purpose, set variable, and I'm going to make a new variable that's called string, and the value is going to be purpose. So the purpose, of course, we've defined up here. So now I'm saying set variable string value purpose, set value string, set the variable string value color. Oops, without the dot at the end. Gobo. Type. And I'm going to take those same variables, copy paste them, and I'm going to put them up here in this first one as well. Okay. So again, what I'm doing is I'm adding a new variable string, and I'm just passing along whatever the instrument or the field value was based on those earlier variables. And I'm only creating the string based on what we're currently searching for. So now what I can say down here under filter state is I could say search. So this is going to say, you know, of course, the search value, the search parameter was something like instrument type or color. So now I can say search and space. as a string and string. Save that. And now when I come in here and I do my, I'm going to show all, when I do my first search, you'll see right there, type source 436. So pretty cool. Maybe I even want to add to the front of that. Maybe I want to say, well, instead of adding it there, maybe in the front of this text box, I want to do something like currently viewing, currently viewing type source 436. And now I need to add this same thing up here into my constraint. Because now if I click it again, current set, it's not updating anything. If I did it as a new search, it's going to work because I have it down here in this second half of my script. But doing it here as a current set is not actually adding anything. So instead of setting the variable here, if I set the variable, then what's going to happen is it's going to erase everything that I already had in that field. So it's only going to give me the new constrained values that I'm putting in there. So I'm going to use a new thing we haven't used yet. That's going to be the insert calculated result script step. And so there's lots of different parameters I can choose here. First thing I want to make sure I uncheck is select entire contents, because that's going to do essentially the same thing as setting it. It's going to take everything that's in there, delete it, and put my new values in. So I'm going to deselect that. I'm going to specify a target, and you notice I can specify a field or a variable. So I'm going to specify that I want to insert this into filter state. And now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to copy paste this just so I don't have to get the syntax all right again. And then my calculated result is going to be that. Now I'm going to leave it like that for now so you can see the error that we're going to get. When I do, let's do show all. Right. And let's say I want to view type 36s, currently viewing type source 436, lead 202, current set. You see it didn't add a space in between there. So type source 436, color L202. So in this insert calculated script step, I just want to add another space onto the beginning of this, this thing. So again, that's a string with a space in it. And then our search variable and our string variable that we've defined. Boom, just like that. So now I'm going to show all, pipe in temps with lead 202, current set, pipe in temp color lead 202. And of course, as you define this, you could split these things up with quotes or with brackets or with something else, whatever you want to necessarily do to make this a little bit more easy to see. Now, what you might notice is when I'm clicking on show all, this obviously isn't changing. So there's two ways I can go about that. If I wanted to have it say currently viewing all records, I would need to make a button and a script that, that sets that variable and that shows all records. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is if I don't want this to show up at all while I am looking at all my records, I can actually hide that based on context. So I'm going to go into layout editor here. I'm going to choose the field. And then under the data tab here, I can choose hide object when, actually before I do that, I'm just going to copy paste some values here because I'm going to do a similar thing here. Hide object when total record count. Oh, wait. So I can't use this exact syntax because these are local variables, but I'm going to use the same kind of format. So instead of the variable, I actually have to use the original calculation that I used in the script. So this is just kind of a way to get me close. So I'm going to say get total record count does not equal get found count. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is this is kind of a negative. You have to remember that you have to think opposite of this. So I want to hide it when it is this. So I actually want this to be an equals, not a not equals. And now, whenever the currently total number of records equals however many records are in here, this will not show up. If I click on instrument type and I've started to constrain that set a little bit, now it's going to show up. And you see I can keep drilling this down and it's going to keep adding things on top of that all the way down, all the way through. So pretty cool. Then because show all, it's going to disappear. Now let's say that I didn't want that to disappear. Let's say instead, let me get rid of this little thing right here. Let's say instead I want to say viewing all records. What I'm going to need to do is add a button for that. So I'm going to copy paste one of these guys. I'm going to add it up here. Show all. Different icon. Let's just do that maybe. That's interesting looking, right? Show all. And unfortunately, this is going to have to be a script. So in a normal case, if we just wanted to show all button, this could be a single step. But we actually have to make a script for this because we have to do more than one thing. The first thing we have to do is show all. The second thing we have to do is redefine that global variable. So I'm going to make, let's do this under data viewing, maybe. Say show all records, set variable. I'm just going to say all records. Boom. And now on this button, I'm going to link that over to that script. Show all. That's really all I got to do. So now when I click on show all, currently viewing all records. Now, again, this button, I guess the last thing I'll go over today, this button could become, again, layout agnostic if you wanted it to with script parameters. Let's say you wanted different, you could have different filter states for different things. So I could say, I could maybe change the variable on here to be work note filter state. And then there could be an instrument record filter, or excuse me, an instrument record filter state or a work note filter state. And then depending on context of script parameters, I could actually change those things. Because if I just added this over to the other layout right now, it's not going to be smart enough to know what layout it's on. So definitely can do that. I'm not going to spend the time doing that here because it's not super important for our purposes. But hopefully you get the idea of how that's useful. Okay, let me double check my list here. Oh, only other thing I think it's worth showing you today. Of course, we made this find by field script pretty complicated. And while it probably makes sense as you study it right now, let's say 3 years from now, you have to come back in here and you have to fix something. It can be pretty hard to figure out what you were trying to do at the time. So I don't think I've showed you how to do comments yet. I'm going to add a couple of quick comments here just so you get an idea of how to document the scripts that you're writing. So to do that, I'm going to type a space first and hit enter. And the hashtag or the pound sign is basically what denotes that is a comment. So typically at the top of my scripts, I like to say what they do. I usually put a copyright thing at the top. I'm not going to worry about that for this one. I'm just going to break this up kind of by what we're doing step by step. So we have define variables. Let's say this is set counts to shows dialog if it's training. Great. So you see, I'm just kind of adding some documentation here. So if this way, I don't need to go in and say, okay, what was message choice 1? I have it right here in a comment. I'll add this here. Something like that. You get the idea. Now, looking at this again, we probably should have done this in the opposite order. So maybe that the first thing that happens if you don't have anything would be first. We could change that around. Doesn't super matter other than just a simplicity standpoint, but that's totally up to you. find, and then we'll just say adds to title. So now I've added some comments in here that will help us 3 years from now when we're trying to edit this script, know what we were trying to figure out. And typically, like I said, I'll add several lines of comments at the top to kind of do an outline of what the script is doing so that when I am reading it later, it's a little bit easier to make sense. So great. That is it on my list for today. This kind of concludes chapter 1. I know that today's stuff was very dense. So thank you for bearing with me through that. If there are any questions, I will hang out for a couple more minutes here on Zoom as well as on YouTube Live. So throw your questions in the chat and I can get to them. Otherwise, I hope to see you all Thursday night for the start of chapter 2. We will be kind of starting to expand the instrument side of things a little bit. We're going to be adding a gobo library. We're going to potentially be adding some color swatches with the eventual goal in chapter 2 to where you'd be able to print actual lighting paperwork from the from your records that you've put in here. So great. So again, I'll hang out for a couple minutes, throw any questions you have in there, and thanks. Comment here from Lee, prefer found count, total record count. If found count equals total record count. Yeah, that's you. So the comment from Lee here is basically switching the order of those. That makes total sense. So it's basically just switching these things around here, just because just to help it make more readability sense. So I'm going to do that real quick. All right, so this first thing is going to be the thing that changed. The total record count is probably not going to change in the context of this script, at least. So good comment there, Lee. That makes a lot of sense. Great. I will do anything else you guys want to hear about before I sign off for the evening. Great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I will kind of monitor the chat for a few more minutes. If anything else comes in, I will answer it. So don't close your chat right away. You can also email me, reach out if something didn't make sense. And great. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I will see you on Thursday night.